Hi, it's Linda Rainer of lindarainer.com, career strategist, speaker, and coach. And in this video, I'm going to teach you the top 10 resume tips that'll help to land you more interviews and ideally job offers. So let's get started with tip number 1. Tip number 1 is all about your profile or summary, and that's the first section on your resume that potential employers will see. So you want to make sure that it's short and sweet yet informative, and it should only be about 2 to 3 bullet points max. And it should emphasize your technical background, not your soft skills. So for example, if you were a designated accountant looking for a new opportunity, you'd probably start your first sentence something like this. A designated CPA with strong financial reporting and planning experience in large public companies within the technology and healthcare industries. That would be your first bullet point. Then your second bullet point would then emphasize more of the software skills, the technical skills that you have. So you could say something like, possess strong working knowledge of Microsoft Excel, SAP, and Oracle. The last two I just mentioned were accounting software systems. So if you don't have that experience and you're not an accountant, then just disregard that. But anything that's software related or maybe languages, anything that's technical that you can point out right at the beginning of your resume would be very important. Let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is all about mirroring your work experience to the job that you're applying for. Mirroring your experience means looking at the job description and asking yourself if you have the same duties, experience, qualifications that the role is asking for you to have. Now, if you don't, then you do want to ask yourself if this is appropriate for you to be applying for this role at this point in time. Maybe you need to keep staying at your current job and try to see if there's any way that you can take on some duties that match up to the ideal job that you want to apply for. Now, if you do already have some of the experience, then you don't really need to worry about this tip. It's just another check that you need to make. Now, on to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is all about highlighting the buzzwords and using them. While you're writing your work experience and describing your job descriptions in your resume, you want to first look at the job description in detail, take a highlighter, and start highlighting the exact keywords and buzzwords that the job is asking for. Because what you're going to do is then take those same buzzwords and keywords and then match them onto your resume. Meaning, start to formulate your sentences based on what the job description is about. When the hiring manager actually looks at your resume, they can see that there's a clear indication that you are a good match for the role because your experience matches up to the role. Now moving on to tip number 4. Speak in the hiring manager's language, not your own. And this is pretty much an extension of tip number 3, but what I mean by that is you really want to mimic the words that are used in the job description. Because when a potential employer reads your resume, they want to read it in a way that it's quick, it's easy. Really, they're just skimming it. They're not even reading it. And so they want to make sure that they pick up on the key words that they require for this job. So if you are able to catch on to those buzzwords and incorporate them in the phrases that you put on your resume for your job experience, then that's only going to help you. So for example, if a job description says something like, prepare financial statements, then you're going to put it in your resume and you're going to say, prepare financial statements on a monthly, quarterly, and yearly basis. So you're just finishing off the sentence and giving it a little bit more detail and tailoring it to your specific background and experience. Tip number 5 is all about your accomplishments. This is an area that I find is key to really standing out from other candidates in a job search process. And a lot of people don't even bother putting in their accomplishments for whatever reason. So you want to be different. You want to reflect and actually think about your most recent accomplishments in your current role, your most recent role, and in your previous roles. And an accomplishment is anything where you've saved time, saved money, improved processes, improved profitability, anything that's helped your company or department in some way, shape, or form, and ideally that is quantifiable. I'll get into talking about more accomplishments after this, but make sure you start thinking about what are some of your major accomplishments that you've been recognized for in your roles. Tip number 6 is an extension of tip number 5, and it's about being job specific about your accomplishments. What that means is You shouldn't be listing your accomplishments in one major section on your resume. What that does is it confuses employers and potential hiring managers because they can't tie back the exact accomplishment to the role that you've accomplished them in. It could have been 10 years ago, it could have been 5 years ago, it could have been just yesterday, but they have no idea because it's not related to the specific jobs that you've had. What I mean by that is you might have your most recent role, you'll have a list of your job duties, and underneath that you'll put the word accomplishments, and underneath that you'll put your 1, 2, or 3 accomplishments that you have related to that particular job. So that's going to make it more easily read by employers and hiring managers, and it gives them a lot more context as to where and when you achieved that accomplishment. Tip number 7 is all about quantification. Quantify, quantify, quantify wherever possible. Specifically, again, relating to your accomplishments. If you've been able to save time, save money, improve some sort of process that's resulted in some sort of quantifiable result, then you definitely want to indicate that. So think in terms of dollars, think in terms of percentages, time, hours, days, months, whatever it is that you can indicate that says you went from this much down to this much, or this much up to this much, whether it's your profitability or cost that you're talking about. When you can quantify, it just makes your accomplishment that much more attractive to potential employers. Tip number 8 is all about your dates. Be transparent and thorough. A lot of candidates I've seen have only indicated their years with respect to their job titles. So for example, if you were a financial analyst between 2013-2016, they're only including the 2013-2016 and not including the months. What this does is subconsciously, it makes the potential employer or hiring manager think that you're trying to hide something, because it's pretty easy for us to hide a gap in our work experience if we haven't included the months. So in order to appear transparent and honest, you really want to include the months. And what that does is, if there are gaps that are in your resume, then you just have to be prepared to answer them in the interview. But at least they don't think that you're trying to hide something. Okay, we're almost at the home stretch. So tip number 9 relates to using bullets and not paragraphs. Writing lengthy tales of your job duties and lumping together your sentences on your resume is not going to get you close to getting an interview. Like I said, hiring managers and employers, they skim your resumes. They do not read them. So what that means is you need to use clear, concise, simple bullet points that are detailed enough and describe your job experience relevant to the role. Okay, finally, on to tip number 10. Does it sound like you're talking to grandma? If yes, that's a good sign. What I mean by that is, you want to explain your job experience on your resume in a similar way to how you would explain your job if you were talking to your grandmother. And that means keep it simple. You don't want to start going all complicated and start throwing in acronyms all over the place that people don't understand. Instead, if it's a project that you've worked on that you're proud of and you want to indicate it on your resume, then just simply describe what the project was about. What did it result in? What did you do? What was your role? But don't get into, oh, I worked with these X number of teams, and name all the teams and discuss the titles of the people that you dealt with and discuss the different acronyms for different meanings of the projects that you had to deal with. People just want to get a very simple, clear vision of what work you've done. And so therefore, you want to make it very clear, concise, and simple. So in this video, you learned the top 10 resume tips that will help you to land more job interviews.